There we go. All right, so we're just going to jump right into what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the update of our status. We're going to talk about an update to the actual plan. There was also communication last week that we would be responding to the Sacramento County Office of Education. I had to slow down and I say Alameda County Office of Education regarding the first interim, and then we'll talk about next steps. So one of the things that I've been able to kind of hear from constituents is, what is happening and how do I explain this narrative of why we're in this place at this point in time. So when we look back at some of the reports that the district has received over time, and you condense down what the narrative is that ultimately we've had expenditures that continue to grow. And in addition to that, as the expenditures grow, there's an indication, and this is a quote from the FCMAT report, of potential cash insolvency. And so how in an elevator speech you would say that is ultimately why we're in this place. We are spending more than we earn, and if we continue this trend, we'll run out of cash. So even in the FCMAT report, there's a potential, which means that there is the opportunity for this trajectory to be turned around. And so we can control these things. We do have to have some very serious conversations about our programs and activities, but it is in the district's ability to work through this process. And so we've talked about finding the way forward and finding a pathway to get there. There were concerns as it relates to the last several weeks of where we are now to kind of restate and walk backwards. For me, it was really important to walk backwards in order to go forward, so that we can have a different start as it relates to me being clear about where we've been, and then to work to help support where we're going. And so with that being said, we do have an update regarding the cash flow. So tonight, again, due to time, and I know that there's a very heavy agenda, the cash flow projection, the first interim letter required, and we shared this out last week, that we recalculate the cash flow report and update monthly, and this month using December actuals. So when you look at the cash flow report, and there is a copy of the letter with the revised cash flow in the packet, when you look at the cash flow report from first interim, there are some areas that you can see that looked like we weren't projecting cash. I pointed out to the budget committee, and there will be a report on that one of the lines very specifically was federal revenue. So we talked about some of those whys. I shared in the letter that the district does have a robust tool, but like many Excel-based programs, if you're not familiar with the actual program and how the formulas work, it is very possible for you to not project accurately. So I not only revise the first interim using the first interim data as of that moment in time with some updates to some of the formulas, but then also updated the revised cash. And so at this point, we're looking at the end of June, we would end with $3 million, where previously you reported a negative cash balance. That negative cash is a major trigger. It means, wait a minute, so in addition to your budget, which is what you plan to do, your cash is saying, if you compare that to what you plan to do, if you spend all of it and your revenue comes in the way you're projecting, you'll run out of cash. And so they're two different dynamics, but they definitely are connected. So that ultimately is upside as it relates to where we're going and what we need to do. We'll continue to do this process monthly. There's more to unpack as it relates to the projections, which often are based on your past history. So all school districts do this. You're looking at your past trends, but we definitely have a way forward of updating our report. And then the tool that I use is the FCMAT Projection Pro cash flow, as well as the multi-year projection. It also becomes a good barometer for the district to be able to use to compare. And does the cash flow look like it's moving in the right direction? So this will become a monthly update for the board, but definitely a move in a different direction that we're not reporting negative cash at this time. So this slide just really talks about how we address our spending, which again is related to the budget, what we plan to do and then what we actually do. We have obligations as a school district to make sure that we are paying our expenses. The concern is that, again, we're not earning enough revenue for some of the expenses that we've committed to. And that is the work that we'll need to work through to prioritize. So again, I won't go through this slide, but with that, we're focusing on our current year, 25-26, while we are building the budget for 26-27. As I shared previously, and as a good reminder, in the fiscal solvency plan for 26-27, there was an ask to not only, as far as major things, reduce the administrative positions to 270, and then in addition to that, that all budgets be reduced by 20%. So with that, we just completed, and I really want to thank the budget team, as well as all the department leaders and school sites for completing that process in a very tight timeline, along with human resources and other departments that work through that in a very tight timeline, because we actually started later than we normally do. I understand that this may be the time that there are tensions that are high, but I really need people to be appreciated and to understand that to do this work, they need to hear that support. They need to hear the support because they are the ones who are going to make sure it happens regardless of what is happening. And so that commitment professionally needs to be acknowledged. And so we want to make sure that we thank and appreciate the teams for what they're done. They're all tired, so they're probably watching versus many of them being present, but definitely want to appreciate them. So with that, the revisions to the fiscal solvency plan include a revised view. So what you're seeing tonight is the continued version of what is more of the financial strategy piece of the list of strategies. What you'll begin to see in the future is an actual full plan, which will include our FICMAT indicators, so we'll be adding that. So you'll be seeing that in the future with a document that looks very different, and eventually we'll be asking the board to adopt it. So there are several elements about how this particular plan looks differently. It basically looks at from and to, how we started and where we're going. So I'm just gonna really get into what the plan looks like looking at the time. Each action is listed. So the original action is listed, as well as if there's a new item, it is indicated currently as new. You also see us reconciling what we projected in this particular first area of $40 million, for instance, that we were going to be able to reduce, and what you're seeing, which is again an update from what we communicated last week, is that currently in this section, we have 12 million, I'm rounding, that we've identified that under budget reductions or transfers or contributions that we can work through. Any of the areas where you see that there's no dollar amount, if you look at the rationale, it begins to discuss why. Some of the areas are still in progress. Some of the areas you'll see there is additional meetings and communication. Some of the areas, it was on the fiscal solvency plan, like attendance recovery, but we don't have a finite strategy or data that we can articulate at this time, but it will be something that we'll continue to put on the list. And some of the items you'll see as we move through, we also note that there's a recommendation perhaps to move it to 26-27 due to the timeline and based on where we are in 25-26, being able to start that work. This second section, we originally projected 12.5 million. This is to reduce expenditures. We've identified 19 million. So one of the questions was asked, do we think that we'll be able to do the items that are now on the revised list? We don't put anything on the list that we can't do. So these numbers all have a source of truth and the math behind it as to how we could do it, to include the second green item I added, which was included in the first interim. Why I added it to this particular fiscal solvency plan is because it was included in your first interim, but not really highlighted as a strategy to use. And so it's important as we're going through all of these things that we're doing, that we're clear about where these strategies are coming from. In addition to that, some of the areas, like the last new item, our supplemental concentration budget has a finite revenue projection that comes from the local control funding formula. When you currently look at the budget, the expenditures are over the projected revenue. That creates a deficit in the unrestricted general fund. So what do you do about that? You rebalance that budget so where it balances to zero. So some of those strategies are balancing budgets because, for instance, if you have $100 and then you say you're going to spend $120, you're negative 20. That's an example of what that $4.3 million is balancing the budget. And we've talked about the Chromebook, that's more than a viable option. Lastly, just want to point out that when we're showing that an activity is moved, that AFSP means there was amended fiscal solvency plan. There were, at the last board meeting, there was a motion that the board adopted to add additional items. So I'm going to go to one of those items, for instance, the purchase orders, all of that supply-related activity. So I'm going to slide a couple of pages down. And so amended fiscal solvency plan number 4 is freeze all supply purchases, not janitorial and central office and school sites for the remainder of the fiscal year. That $2.3 million represents what is currently unspent in all department and site budgets. And so the way for us to be able to ultimately restrict that resource would be that we would create an object code that in this case would be like probably I haven't figured out the number, the last object code 49999. We would then adjust the budgets that are in school sites and departments to that object code. That budget would not be available for use by a site or department. And then that is the way ultimately we remove that expenditure from being in that budget from being utilized. What happens if we have a situation? That's one of the reasons why we still leave it, so that if we need to make an adjustment, we know where the resources are based on where it was originally. And by the end of the year, then ultimately that particular resource would not be available. This would also be something, for instance, in the cash flow that I would make an adjustment to because I know we've now restricted this resource. So in the cash flow, I would reduce the 4,000 object codes by $2.3 million in this example because it would not be spent and it's not projected to be spent. So therefore, no cash would exit the district as it relates to this particular activity. Okay. So with that is essentially the various areas of update and how to read this particular update and report. One of the areas that we made to make sure that we are following up on is there was also discussion regarding some specific positions last week that were requested to be added to the budget, and we indicated that they all fall within the 270 remaining positions that currently the district staff has developed for the 26-27 year. The board wanted to review this again this year. So this week. And so we are asking for the board to reconsider this particular area. I've highlighted the position that is of most importance, the Deputy Chief of Schools. As it relates to the Attorney General settlement that the district has, that there is an action required. So if that action that we received tonight is the board's statement about what they're going to do as it relates to that position, or you take action to approve the staff to begin to recruit for that position, we would need to understand that clearly tonight as part of the actions of approving this revised fiscal solvency plan. Lastly, the response to the first interim letter is also included in this packet. The board asked to see that prior to it being sent. And so with that, we already talked about what the deadline was, in addition to what the ask is. And basically, it's a monthly update of the fiscal solvency plan, our strategies that we'll be able to realize, and the progress and updates to the cash flow. We've already talked about what the cash flow balance is. One of the things that I also shared that we absolutely needed to do was at your first interim, the fiscal solvency plan budgeted reductions were included. And so what that did was it reduced ultimately or improved the fund balance, but it ultimately means that if we weren't going to be able to realize, which we've already talked about over the last 2 weeks, some of those items that we weren't going to be able to realize, we need to take them out. And so with that, it modified the ending fund balance from 34 million to 113 million. But if you go back to, and as I move on, I'm gonna skip this slide and come back to it. There was an ask for a fiscal solvency thermometer. And so if you look at that, and there's one here, thank you so much. One here. When you look at the updated plan, and we've identified 43.8 million, so that's 39% of the goal. We are now looking at the true deficit, which was your deficit at first interim. So nothing has changed. It just means that you're seeing the number more properly, so that we know exactly where we should be and where we're going. Some of the areas that we have not addressed, I'm going to slide back a bit, and we're still working on, in addition to the amendment to the fiscal solvency plan, are the purchases and contracts, as well as the areas related to positions and expenditures. So we still are working in this area, which you see why you see several zeros. Some of it, as I shared, in addition to the amendments, are a function of if and how we would deploy these particular areas and what the cost would be. You'll see that as far as the cost avoidance or the savings at your next board meeting. In addition to that, anything related to contracts, there was a item that said, please review, eliminate, it's the green emergency procedures, eliminate all supply and contract budgets not encumbered by January 31st. So we were already in that arc to do that, in addition to looking at all of the other new and existing contract-related expenditures to see where we are. And then that also becomes how we project what upside for 25-26 we'll be able to yield. There have been contracts, as I shared last week, that have already been communicated to various vendors that would be ending. So we gave some examples, for instance, some that were in business services and other areas that we did discuss. So that work is continuing, and we'll continue to update you on the next plan. Finally, back to the letter. Ultimately, there's the cover letter. This particular graph is a graph that the district has had before. I just added the last column just so everyone can see, once we took the fiscal solvency plan items out, how the first interim budget changed. So it's really just resnapping what your first interim looks like without those modifications and changes. And then lastly, what we're still reviewing, in addition to the areas we're working on, is our restricted resources, as I've also noted before, so that we can see if there is some really good, proper, and compliant opportunities for us to reallocate expenses. We do need to look at our vacancies and that analysis to see what that will yield for us for this year, because again, if we have vacancies that we're not going to fill or that we haven't filled, then those are expenditures that again would not be not only spent, but cash that would also not expend from the district. We also need to look at our spending trends, and then there's a lot of other non-labor. So that would be all other expenditures that are not related to compensation that we're reviewing as well. And many of those, again, are specific in the fiscal solvency plan, and then broader in other areas that we need to review. So with that, our next steps are to complete a lot of the work that I've already repeated that we need to do. So this will be a continuous cycle monthly. Our next update will be February 18th. Now that we have finished budget development, as I mentioned, we're reconciling what information we received from budget development. At this point in time, don't know how close or how far that will get us to addressing 26-27. But that's where we are in this moment in time to be able to coalesce that. So we should be able to have an estimate or a preliminary adjustment amount for 26-27. So because of the way February lands, we'd be using the multi-year projection that we just revised with that particular balance, as well as the projected amendments to 25-26 to say this is what 26-27 could preliminarily look like based on that information. So with that, I will yield the floor back to you, President Jean, for board deliberation and questions.
With 37 seconds to spare.
I try.
Do we have any public comment?
You betcha. We have a lot.
I'm shocked by this. What is our number?
It's at least 36.
36. All right, so I am going to ask that we keep these speeches to 1 minute so that we can hear everybody.
That's not a choice. That's
Where are you guys at?
Are you so serious? Don't
that's a practice.
What are you guys' 1 minute?
don't smash.
Okay.
Yeah, 1 minute.
1 minute?
We're all on board.
Okay. All right. I have done a quick confer with the board, and we are asking it be 1 minute for each of our speakers. Can we go ahead and get started?
Okay, first speaker, Danny Roletti, followed by Cindy Hollander. Cindy has 2 cards for 2 minutes. She will be followed by Laura Butler, who has 2 cards for 2 minutes.
Good evening. My sentiments capture feelings and emotions that I had felt after last Thursday's, and I know it's a roller coaster ride of updates, so hoping you can understand of where I was coming from after last Thursday's board meeting that I did not attend, but I see some updates. I want to be clear from the onset, I get the severity of our budget crisis, and I'm willing to do my part as a member of non-represented staff. However, I feel there's unfairness about the process, and quadrupling furlough days as of last Thursday, it feels like a targeted attack on members like myself who don't have the shield of a union or collective bargaining agreement. I wonder and would ask, what would the engagement process look like if a member of UPE SCTA or SEIU had a similar solution put out by a board member? Would that happen unilaterally, or would there be discussions or engagement with those people? I want to help save SUSD, and I respect the urgency of our situation. I just ask for the genuine opportunity to have a voice in this process about matters that impact my ability to do my job and impact my livelihood. Not just 2 minutes at a podium, but a seat at the table where dialogue is possible. And I'll finish with this. I'm making this public comment independently and of my own volition. My intent is to support the future of this district by offering a constructive perspective on this matter. I want to ensure there is no misunderstanding. I'm speaking my truth. I do not want any of my colleagues or my supervisor to be blamed or held accountable for my comments here tonight.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Cindy Hollander for 2 minutes, followed by Laura Butler for 2 minutes. And then Garrett Kirkland for 4 minutes.
Good evening. Good evening, President, trustees, and new superintendent. My name is Garrett Kirkland, and I'm speaking tonight on behalf of United Professional Educators, AFSA Local 154, AFL-CIO, the recognized collective bargaining agreement representing site and district administrators. UPE administrators are represented employees working under a ratified and collective bargaining agreement. That agreement was bargained in good faith, approved through lawful process, and relied upon by administrators across this district. Our members honor that contract in full, and we will expect the district and the board to do the same. Over the past several weeks, actions taken as a proposed part of the district's fiscal solvency plan raise serious concerns for UPE, not only about governance and legality, but about the real and lasting impacts these decisions will have on schools, departments, and ultimately students. Several components of the fiscal solvency plan directly conflict with negotiated provisions of the UPE agreement. One of the most concerning is the plan to place administrators whose positions are being eliminated for next year into the classroom immediately. This action violates Ed Code and labor law. The district knows administrator contracts run from July 1 through July 30th. Eliminating positions and reassigning administrators mid-contract is not a minor adjustment. Instead, it is a unilateral change to duties, assignments, and working conditions that must be bargained. Changes of this magnitude without bargaining are not procedural oversights. They are failures to follow the law. And it is always better to negotiate than litigate. The board's actions through this fiscal plan will remove administrators from leadership and support roles that schools and departments rely on, while placing them into instructional roles without adequate planning or consideration for the impacts on core systems, staff, and most importantly, students. As a collective bargaining unit, we insist on bargaining both the decision itself and the impacts of these proposed actions. Administrators understand the district is facing a fiscal crisis. We experience that reality every day on our campuses and in our departments. But fiscal distress does not suspend contracts. It does not erase collective bargaining rights, and it does not give this board the authority to selectively decide which agreements will be honored and which will be not. We are also deeply concerned about the resolution introduced by Board Member Kayada last week at the emergency meeting. It is our understanding that District Legal Counsel advised this board that the resolution violated the Brown Act. Despite that advice, the resolution was still brought forward and approved without being properly agendized. UPE's contract represents a small fraction of the district's structural deficit. Yet this board has repeatedly placed responsibility on administrators while ignoring the role board decisions played in creating the fiscal reality. Accountability requires inspecting what you expect and accepting responsibility for the decisions that led us here. Cutting administrator time does not solve a structural deficit. It slows down systems, delays decisions, and weakens district operations. When leadership capacity is reduced, the work does not disappear. It bottlenecks, and students feel the consequences. We are further concerned by the inequitable application of the fiscal actions across employee groups. Teachers are compensated for 8 non-working days and approved 2% raises for this year and next, under an agreement the district's former chief business officer warned would worsen the fiscal outlook and was never certified. The certification form is still lacking a signature from the CBO. At the same time, unrepresented administrators, staff, and safety officers who keep our district safe are now being told they will lose 12 days of work, while teachers get 8 days of pay for days they do not work. This raises serious questions about equity, about governance, and about decision-making. UPE is not here to deny fiscal reality. We are here to insist on lawful processes, equitable treatment, and respect for the administrators who lead and support this district every day. Our members work long hours, including weekends, and serve as the operational backbone of this system. We remain ready to work collaboratively towards real, sustainable solutions, but collaboration requires bargaining, transparency, trust, and the adherence to law, not unilateral action. We urge this board to correct course, engage appropriately with UPE and other bargaining units, and avoid further actions that expose the district to legal risk, operational harm, and long-term damage to trust.
Good evening, President Jean, members of the board, Interim Superintendent McCarn, Cabinet, and community members. My name is Laura Butler, and this is my 28th year serving students in this district. I'm the principal of Abraham Lincoln Elementary School, and I also serve on the UPE AFSA Local 154 AFL-CIO board. I'm here tonight to talk about data. Principals love data. Specifically, what district numbers show regarding salary and benefit spending and what that means for schools and students. The first chart shows how salary and benefit dollars are distributed across employee groups in this district. The data shows SCTA members represent over 60% of salary and benefit spending, and nearly 29% goes to SEIU, representing classified staff. By contrast, UPE represents just 4.2% of total salary and benefit costs. Unrepresented management accounts for 3.5%. Taken together, the people responsible for the day-to-day school operations account for less than 8% of total salary and benefit expenditures. These data matter because it tells us something important. Administrators are not driving the district's structural deficit. The second chart shows the actual dollar amounts, and the story is the same. The cost of salary and benefits for SCTA members is $417 million. For SEIU members, it's over $201 million. UPE, all principals, assistant principals, coordinators, and selected directors across this district represents just over $29 million. So when administrators are singled out for furloughs, unpaid days, or reductions in work time, it is not because those actions meaningfully solve the budget problem. The math simply does not support the conclusion. What those cuts do accomplish is something else entirely, as they negatively affect day-to-day operations of schools, including support services to students, expanded learning, facilities, technology, nutrition services, responsiveness to families, and student safety. Who are we supposed to call when those people aren't there? These cuts affect students. From a fiscal perspective, cutting administrators produces minimal savings. From an operational perspective, it produces maximum disruption. This is the imbalance we are trying to surface tonight. If we are serious about addressing a structural deficit, the solution cannot be to target one of the smallest cost centers in the system, especially when the cost center is responsible for keeping schools functioning. These charts clearly show that this is not a numbers problem caused by administrators. It is a structural problem that requires structural solutions. School leaders are ready to be part of this conversation, but solutions must be honest about the data, proportional in impact, and focused on students. The math is clear, the consequences are clear, and the need for a different approach should be clear as well. Thank you for your time tonight.
Good evening. My name is Cindy Hollander. I'm the principal at Sequoia Elementary, and I grew up in this district. My father was an administrator, counselor, and teacher in this district, so I have a lot of knowledge of Sac City Unified that many of you may not. I'm very concerned about what I see, and I hope to get reassurance from you that what is happening in our country, government officials supporting those who are favored and targeting those who are not favored, is not going to happen here at Sac City Unified School District. I'm here tonight to talk plainly about power, priorities, and consequences. This board is making fiscal decisions that fully protect SCTA contract provisions, while unrepresented administrators and other unrepresented employees are being required to absorb significantly deeper losses, including 12 unpaid days, and the removal of leadership capacity from schools. That is not a coincidence. That is not neutral. And it's not without consequence. You can call these decisions fiscal, you can call them necessary, but you cannot pretend they're evenly applied, and you cannot pretend they're harmless. Because when administrators are taken out of the workplace, schools do not function the same. This is even more acute when decisions are made hastily and imprudently. When administrators are furloughed, hiring slows or stops, onboarding of teachers and support staff is delayed, teachers' pipeline for guidance and technical support is slowed, students lose access to opportunities for enrichment, student safety is endangered, IEPs and 504s are obstructed, necessary updates to systems are put off, and family communication suffers. Those impacts are immediate, and they're felt by students first. As a principal, I can tell you, schools run on leadership capacity. When you remove that capacity, everything slows down. Decisions that take hours take days and even weeks. Problems that should be resolved quickly linger. Students wait longer for support. Parents wait longer for answers. So when this board chooses to protect the interests of the most politically powerful group in the system, while shifting disproportionate harm onto unrepresented employees, is making a values statement, whether it acknowledges that or not. And that brings me to governance. Good governance is not just about whether something is technically legal. It's about whether decisions can be defended ethically, educationally, and publicly. It is about whether this board can say with a straight face that its decisions are made independently of political pressure and squarely in the best interest of students. Right now, that claim is strained. School leaders are not asking for special treatment. We're asking for fair treatment and for decisions that do not undermine the functioning of schools in the name of expediency. Students do not benefit when leadership is removed. They do not benefit when hiring is delayed. They do not benefit when school systems slow down because administrators are forced out of a workday. This board has chosen a path, and that path has consequences for schools, students, and public trust. You still have the opportunity to correct course, to apply fiscal solutions equitably, to separate governance from political influence, and to make decisions that can be defended not just in a spreadsheet, but in the lived experience of students and families. Our schools are watching, our communities are watching, and our students are already living with the impact of the choices you are making. Thank you for the opportunity.
Next speaker is Glennie Kennery with 11 cards for 11 minutes.
Good evening, President, Vice President, trustees, superintendent, and members of the Sacramento City Unified School District community. First, I'd like to thank Superintendent Allen for her service in over 30 years that she's done for our district, and also congratulations to Superintendent McCarn. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. My name is Glendolyn Pacheco, and I am here representing the Youth Development Support Services Department along with my team behind me. First, I want to acknowledge the very difficult reality that Sac City Unified School District is currently facing. The financial crisis impacting the district has created an extremely challenging and painful situation, including the possibility of up to 12 furlough days and the threat of mass layoffs affecting staff across many departments. These are not numbers on paper. These are real people, dedicated employees who serve students every day, who now face uncertainty about their ability to support their families and maintain stability in their lives. On behalf of Youth Development Support Services, I want to clearly state that we stand in full solidarity with all SCUSD staff who are being impacted by these proposed furloughs and layoffs. We recognize the emotional toll this causes, the disruption it creates, and the stress it places on employees, students, and families. This moment is painful, and we understand that no one in this room takes these decisions lightly. We do. At the same time, it is important to clarify the funding structure of our department and the programs we support, specifically around the grant restrictions. Youth Development Support Services is not funded through the SCUSD General Fund. Our work and many of the positions currently impacted by furlough plans is supported entirely through restricted state and grant funding. And that's like many of our colleagues that are impacted by this, including the Expanded Learning Opportunities Program, which many of you may be familiar with, ELOP. Restricted funding, by definition, cannot be used to resolve a general fund deficit. ELOP dollars are not interchangeable with general fund dollars, and they cannot be redirected to address broader district budget gaps. For that reason, I would like to briefly explain what ELOP funding is, what it requires, and why furloughing any grant-funded restricted staff creates serious operational and compliance concerns. The Expanded Learning Opportunities Program is a statewide initiative designed to expand access to before school, after school, intersession, and summer learning opportunities for TK through 6th grade students. particularly those with the greatest needs. This includes students from our low-income households, English learners, foster youth, and our unhoused youth, and working families who rely on safe, structured, supervised outside the instructional day. That's after school, the moment the bell rings until 6 p.m. ELOP funding comes with clear expectations from implementation, staffing, quality, and outcomes. In SCUSD, these funds support expanded learning programs across over 70 school sites, including staffing, coordination, training, supervision, and overall program delivery. Importantly, they also fund youth development support services staff who oversee and ensure the safety and compliance of these programs. Many of the employees currently in furlough plans are also funded through many restricted funds, especially ELOP, not through the general fund. As a result, furloughing these staff does not meaningfully reduce the district's general fund deficit. Instead, it disrupts safe, quality programming. Staffing is foundational to ELOP. If furloughs are imposed on ELOP-funded staff, staffing gaps are created that cannot simply be filled with general fund resources, nor can dollars be easily reprogrammed without risking non-compliance. This places the district in a difficult position operationally and fiscally. A clear example is Summer Matters. Many of you are familiar with Summer Matters. With only a few months left in fiscal year, our department is already deep into planning for Summer Matters, the majority of which is funded through ELOP. 12 furlough days for our staff directly translates to 12 lost days of planning, coordination, and cross-departmental collaboration with all our other departments, which includes district end-of-the-year accounting processes and deadlines. The months of March, April, and May are critical for requisitions pertaining to contracts, purchases, and per diems necessary to support students. It is also important to note that restricted funds must be expended within a specific timeline and guidelines. If funds go unspent due to staffing disruptions, the district risks falling out of an alignment with the approved plan. Over time, this can result in funds being subject to return to the state and may jeopardize future access to this critical funding stream. In other words, if restricted funding like ELOP goes unspent due to staffing reductions or furlough impacts, the district may not lose program capacity. It may lose the funding itself. This creates a long-term negative outcome that would be extremely difficult to recover from. With that said, I want to be very clear. Youth Development Support Services is not here to criticize, accuse, or place any blame. We recognize the complexity of the situation. We understand that district leadership is making extremely difficult decisions under this intense pressure and limited options. Our purpose in sharing this point is to ensure that the full impact of furloughing grant-restricted funded staff has been considered, not only in terms of immediate budget strategy, but also in terms of long-term consequences for students, programs, and district compliance. In the interest of fostering respectful collaboration, we would like to present a few questions for discussion in future meetings, and we hope that you consider to meet with our department and other restricted grant-funded departments. Have the unique restrictions of grant-restricted funding been fully considered in development of the furlough and layoff plan? Has the district evaluated whether furloughing grant-restricted funded employees meaningfully addresses the general fund shortfall, given that these positions are not supported by general fund dollars? Has the district assessed the risk of leaving restricted funds unspent and the possibility that unspent funds may need to be returned to the state, potentially resulting in a long-term loss of funding? And has the district fully considered the operational and safety impacts that furloughing expanded learning staff may have on student supervision, program continuity, and compliance with the California Department of Education Expanded Learning Quality Standards. These questions are asked with respect and with genuine concern because we all share the same goal: to protect our students, support our families, and preserve the educational and developmental opportunities that SUSD provides. In closing, I want to thank everyone for your time, your leadership, and your willingness to listen. I also want to reiterate that Youth Development Support Services stands in solidarity with all of our SCUSD employees impacted by this crisis. These are difficult times, and the hardship being experienced across the district is real. We hope that as solutions are considered, the district will carefully weigh the unique structure of restricted funding programs like ELOP and the critical role they play in supporting student safety, enrichment, and academic success. Thank you for your time and allowing me to speak this evening.
Next speaker is Eric Dela Cruz, and he's recognized for 9 minutes.
You can't right now.
Good evening, Board, President Jean, Interim Superintendent McCarn, and members of the Board. My name is Eric Dela Cruz. I'm an Area Supervisor for Nutrition Services, and I'm here to speak on behalf of my unrepresented colleagues and the chefs from our Central Kitchen who are here with me tonight. Some of us are also constituents in Area 2 and Area 1. We are here to address the proposed furloughs to unrepresented staff in the Nutrition Services Department. The proposed furloughs will eliminate 168 working days for our unrepresented nutrition team over the next 4 months, nearly a full school year of lost service for students. Furloughing staff in restricted funds like Fund 13 provides zero cost savings to the general fund, zero. Our positions are funded through restricted USDA and CDE federal and state sources. Many of us are long-term employees who are deemed essential workers and navigated the impossible task of feeding students curbside during the COVID pandemic, serving 12.5 million meals while everyone else stayed home and received full pay. You can imagine how we feel right now, learning that we are considered non-essential for operations. We also showed up during the 8-day strike in 2022, tapping in our personal networks and relationships to find alternate distribution locations to serve meals at local grocery stores so that students and staff did not have to go across picket lines, and to ensure our students were fed. During the pandemic, the board told staff to stay home. Then the board rescinded that order because nutrition services were essential workers. Within a matter of 3 days, we went from serving 40,000 meals to over 100,000 meals per day, a feat that took selfless dedication to serve the community at a heightened time of need. Today, food prices are crushing families. Universal free meals in California have become a lifeline, delivering millions of meals this year to your constituents. Our meal counts are rising even as enrollment falls, a clear indicator that this program is more critical now, not less. We are a team deeply committed to our mission, ensuring that every student, regardless of income, deserves a freshly prepared meal while at school. We have prioritized putting students first, working countless hours to source high-quality ingredients, develop scratch recipes, and revolutionize the SCUSD school meal program this year by expanding into full production at our Central Kitchen. This took sweat equity, hard work, and a passion for the mission. We are a nationally recognized leader in school meals, yet it appears our own district does not recognize the success and progress it took to get here. We've optimized a public asset, put it to work for the betterment of our students. What we are witnessing is a fundamental failure to understand what these decisions will cost you. Sometimes there's a price worth paying to preserve what matters. Furloughing unrepresented staff, once deemed essential, means furloughing our chefs and our nutrition supervisors, the people who make this program work. Sweeping cuts that deliver zero budget relief to the general fund are profoundly short-sighted. Our former CBO recommended using a scalpel, not a hammer. Instead, you're choosing to dismantle a federally funded program that serves our most vulnerable students, creating hostility, poor morale, and disrupted services, all with no fiscal benefit whatsoever. Our department has been fiscally solvent for 19 years, while other nutrition programs across the state are supported by their general fund. Last year alone, we contributed over $1.2 million to the general fund in indirect costs. Did you know we actually generate revenue for SUSD? The logic fails. You're furloughing the people who manage a self-sustaining, federally funded program while pay increases have been approved that the district cannot afford. Teachers received an additional 8 days worth of pay without adding 8 days to their calendar. Yet you're furloughing unrepresented staff in departments that generate revenue and directly serve the students? We cannot raise the price of a free lunch to cover these increases. Let me repeat that. We cannot raise the price of a free lunch to cover the 38% salary increases approved for SEIU over the last 2 years. We're federally funded and required to operate within the reimbursement rates we receive from the USDA. USDA did not and will not increase our reimbursement rate because the district increased wages. We have proactively taken immediate and responsible steps this school year to reduce our spending. We've closed management positions, reduced staff, and reduced costs significantly by focusing on scratch cooking. Last week, we learned that the Teamsters classified supervisors leadership is promising a job reclassification to their members, which comes before you for final approval in the coming weeks. This reclassification carries an 8% unbudgeted increase. As Board President Jean stated in a message to the staff, we have a systemically poor budgeting practices. We increase spending without evaluating the impact on the full budget. That concern applies directly here. Our TCS represented supervisors are deeply valued members of our team. They are crucial to our daily operations, working directly at sites to ensure meal service runs smoothly. But approval for this reclassification would establish a salary inversion where employees under our supervision are compensated at higher rates than us, yet we are responsible for training, evaluating, supporting, and being held accountable for their performances. Additionally, increasing expenses at this time while we unrepresented staff are actively working to right-size the budget undermines the fiscal sustainability of our meal program, which must remain self-sufficient. The board wants accountability for our unauthorized spending, yet approving this reclassification is exactly that. Authorizing expenses on behalf of a department without evaluating the impact on the full budget. If the reclassification is approved, fiduciary responsibility demands that we balance that budget, which will result in layoffs. Which will result in layoffs within this classification and others. So we are asking you directly. Number one, please exempt essential workers in the unrepresented classification in nutrition from furloughs. You've already done this for per diem and working out of class approvals. Be consistent and apply that same logic to furlough days. These furloughs have no beneficial cost savings to the general fund, none. Number two, we ask that the board postpone TCS job reclassifications until compensation adjustments can be responsibly budgeted and salary compaction corrected. I think is all reasonable. We all stand before you because we need to preserve the integrity of a program that shows up every day to serve the students we prioritize. Our 19-year track record shows that we have and continue to uphold our fiduciary duties and operate within a fiscally responsible budget. It's the right thing to do to ensure that our mission is met, that every student, regardless of income, deserves a freshly prepared meal while at school. Thank you.
Next group of speakers, we have Lauren Ledesma, followed by Amanda Chapman, then Allison Alexander.
Hello, thank you very much for having us here tonight. I am a parent of a preschooler at Edward Kelly Parent Participation Preschool, and my ask tonight is that you reconsider the closure of Edward Kelly. It's been in operation since the 1800s, and it has trained up generations of involved parents and families. On the items, I see a lot of numbers, and I do see a six-finger number next to Edward Kelly, not too far off from turning off unused cell phones. But I think the value that you're missing in those numbers is the amount of money and energy that we pour into Edward Kelly every day that's not accounted for. We all give at least one day in the classroom. We are creating lesson plans for each of the days that we work. We volunteer in our off time. On the weekends, I'm pulling weeds. We paint, we clean, and we take care of that facility. On top of that, we provide materials for the classroom. So thank you very much, Hannah.
Good evening, Superintendent McCarn, President Jean, and board members. I'm Amanda Chapman. I have been a Sac City's teacher for 24 years. Teaching with Edward Kelly's Parent Participation Preschool program by far has been the most impactful and rewarding. We all know the importance of early learning, but our program is multifaceted because parents are learning as well. Their knowledge and confidence grow so that they can continue to stay connected with their child's education while also giving back to our schools. Many parents have gone on to become SUSD office managers, cafeteria workers, yard duties, aides, classroom volunteers, PTA members, and even a board president. One mother came to preschool every day to participate, which helped her learn English. Hence, she was able to leave the program and obtain a job at her child's school. I have witnessed countless success stories with both children and parents in our program. It is disheartening that Edward Kelly is one of the targets in this fiscal crisis. Have you been to Edward Kelly? It was a gift given to the district from the Kelly family, a historical landmark that is often referred to as magical and the crown jewel of the district. Please don't disregard something so precious.
Okay, I'm Allison Alexander. I brought a few cards. Maybe we can get some more time too. I am here also for Edward Kelly, a little known treasure in Sac City, and Sac City has a responsibility to be good stewards of this registered national historical landmark. As they've said, it's been operating for over 100 years. We should be advocating for early education. Edward Kelly serves families who do not qualify for Head Start due to income reasons and who also cannot afford expensive private preschool. It's a truly special place and it has a generational impact. Just this morning, by chance, a contractor at my house, we discovered his children attended Edward Kelly in the 80s. We have a 102-year-old resident of Rosemont who attended Edward Kelly in the early 1900s. The value of this place and its history is not measurable. I'm keenly aware of Sac City's budgetary woes. Closing this program will not solve systemic long-term problems. It's a short-sighted Band-Aid. And as Ms. Chapman also said, has anyone on this board been to Edward Kelly? Do you know where Edward Kelly is? You've got to come visit it and see how special it is before you close it.
Next group of speakers, we have Jonathan Grass, followed by Nikki Davis-Malevsky for 2 minutes, and then Adrian DeSantis for 4 minutes.
Good evening, everyone. I'm the late arrival to help advocate for the Edward Kelly School as well. My name is Jonathan Grass. I have a son that goes there, and to echo a number of the things that you've already heard, it's really a magical place. I really hope that if you've not been there, it's definitely worth your time. Maybe they'll even let you ring the bell. I believe that this parent participation school, like they've said, is a tremendous asset to the district and the greater community. And it should continue to operate if at all possible. Children who get to learn there are more fortunate than I think they will understand until they are older. It's a landmark of Sacramento's history, and being that old traditional schoolhouse, the building itself provides just an unmatched educational atmosphere for these kids and for their parents who participate as well. Looks like my time's up, but I just want to again echo that it's really truly a special place. And Mrs. C, who just spoke earlier, goes above and beyond and definitely deserves to stick around and help educate our youth. Thank you.
Good evening, members of the board, Board President Jean, and Interim Superintendent Kansi McCarn. Nikki Malevsky, President of the Sacramento City Teachers Association, and I represent over 2,500 wonderful educators who work with students every single day. And I know that they would call me remiss if I did not begin speaking with an acknowledgement of the leadership of Superintendent Allen. Coming off of the strike and following in the wake of the failed leadership of the previous superintendent, Lisa Allen was absolutely the right leader to guide our district during that significant transitional period. We have always respected Lisa and her commitment to the students and staff of this district, and the students and staff of this district have always respected her. Similarly, we have a similar level of respect for Interim Superintendent McCarn. During her long tenure in the district, Superintendent McCarn has worked constructively with educators and has been instrumental in putting this district on a positive path. We expect the same progress to continue in her new role, and have appreciated Superintendent McCarn's commitment, wisdom, and willingness to make tough decisions, even when we didn't always agree with them. Because now there are harder decisions that the district has to face in our current budget situation, and following the board's decisive leadership and willingness to tackle our budget problems directly, SCTA and SEIU met with the budget subcommittee consisting of board members Benjamin, Kayada, and Navarro, along with superintendent and her cabinet, including Chief Business Officer Grant Dawson and one of the SCOE fiscal advisors. For the first time since the unaudited actuals were released, revealing the budget crisis, we feel that we may see a light at the end of the tunnel. The consensus in the room was that the district had enough cash on hand with the implementation of the fiscal recovery plan to avoid insolvency through 25-26. Our first major hurdle was overcome. We also believe that with the appropriate commitment and sense of urgency through the fulfillment of the rest of the plan, addressing longer-term deficits in the budget can also occur. The major area of focus remains special education, but we hope that the progress made provides a little more space to address the much-needed and long overdue realignment. Towards that end, now it is not the time to ease up and relax. It is also not the time to sugarcoat reality. It's time to make hard work and follow the board's directive to do everything possible to avoid cuts to decreasing services to students or making cuts to the classroom. Cuts are going to have to come from elsewhere. We appreciate the board making the decision and the directive explicit and clear, and we appreciate the board providing the leadership to create the sense of urgency to address our budget crisis. Yesterday's meeting was extremely productive and constructive, and we look forward to seeing all that constructive work continue over the next few months. Thank you.
Next is Adrian DeSantis for 4 minutes, followed by Maria Rodriguez and Marion Bryson.
Hello, school board and superintendent. My name is Adrian DeSantis. I'm surrounded by my peers from the Manufacturing Design program at John F. Kennedy High School. We're here to address the indiscriminate 20% cuts to all departments. Specifically, I'm here to speak on the passion I have for the current and future state of the CDE program that I've been a part of for the past 4 years. I participated in the Manufacturing and Design, or MAD program at John F. Kennedy High School since I enrolled as a freshman. And the ability I've had to attend a MAD class every day for the past 4 years has been crucial to my success and motivation as a student. The MAD room has an incredible amount of resources available for students interested in hands-on learning. Well over $1 million have been invested in CNC mills, laser cutters, 3D printers, robotics equipment, and much more. Every single student enrolled in MAD has access to all of these resources, and the possibilities for a student who wants to learn about the world of manufacturing are infinite. JFK's student rankings are proof of the success and academic motivation that comes from the MAD program. Despite the MAD graduating class only accounting for 11% of JFK's total graduating class, MAD students make up 62% of the top 50 ranked students. Not only that, the top 5 ranked students are all enrolled in MAD. Every year, a new group of incredible scholars enroll in MAD. Cutting educators from this program would reduce class sizes and therefore the amount of opportunities the incoming students have. It is in the best interest of JFK's future to keep these educators' positions intact.
Good evening, board members. My name is Akeith. I'm here to address the indiscriminate 20% cuts to all departments. SUSD says it intends to keep spending cuts with minimal impact on classrooms and students. Cutting a CTE teacher at a high school program does the opposite. The Kennedy website labels manufacturing and design, culinary arts, and the new auto shop as signature programs. Families choose Kennedy because these programs make students feel prepared and focused on a future career path. If you cut CTE, you weaken one of the main reasons students enroll. Specifically, manufacturing and design is a 4-year pathway. It does not function as a 1-year elective. Removing positions destroys this sequence. It would put an unreasonable load on a single teacher and risks pushing students off track. SUSD promised families that cuts would be kept as far away as possible from students. These proposed cuts break that promise. It is immediately student-facing. It removes a teacher, reduces class sections, and pushes students out of a pathway they already committed to. It directly takes opportunities away from students in the next schedule cycle. During orientations and STEAM nights, we take guests to the machine shop, the auto shop, or the culinary shops. We take them to the rooms where students are machining parts, building robots, or building expertise in their aspiring careers. If you cut positions in the program, you shrink what we can show. When Kennedy brings guests, parents, incoming students, or decision makers to see college and career readiness, where do you expect us to take them if we cut CTE programs like MAD? Thank you.
Good evening, SUSD Board and Superintendent. My name is Ryan Ford. I'm also a member of the Manufacturing Design Program at Kennedy, and I'm here to voice my own opinion as a student on the indiscriminate 20% budget cut. This cut personally taxed SUSD CTE programs due to their teacher salary to program funding ratio, and the 20% budget cut would end in indiscriminate teacher firing and often foreclosure within many CTE programs, especially at our own school. When you overlook the importance of these pathways and force the principal to fire teachers who act as anchors to so many students, you close the door to opportunity. Opportunity is the strength of CTE programs, and it's opportunity for people from diverse backgrounds with diverse interests to experience unique professions, develop extraordinary talents, hobbies, and habits. At my own school, after these planned and supposed budget cuts and likely firing of a teacher, almost 1/5 of students originally accepted to these CTE programs would now be denied. This isn't simply a program, a teacher, or a future career pathway. These programs are what define so many of us students like in this crowd before you, and I cannot imagine never having the opportunity to be in a Kennedy CTE program. Closing this door doesn't simply save money. In fact, the opposite occurs. CTE programs are funded by specialized grants such as the Career Technical Education Incentive Grant and Federal Perkins Act funds that are tied to having certified staff in active programs, and this cut leads to our district losing the ability to get these funds. Since our school district is paid based on student attendance, and removing CTE teachers through these cuts would cause students to leave for other schools or charter schools that offer these programs, the district loses the full amount of per pupil funding. So it's not the opposite of our district's goal. Building Children First will be putting all effort into supporting these opportunities and choices, and this means researching the drastic effects of a seemingly simple choice, such as a broad 20% budget cut, which would most certainly lead to firing one CTE teacher at any given school, destroying a program and all of its benefits. Thank you for your time.
Good Good evening. My name is Maria Banks, formerly Maria Rodriguez. I'm a former SCUSD parent, PTA leader, and LCAP member. I'm here because I believe that public education is the essential element towards providing equal access to a thriving life in our country. And I believe that public education in Sacramento has been at a great risk for many years. In your February 2nd statement to the public regarding the budget, you say you have systematically poor budgeting practices. In part, that is because there, over the last 20 years, have been a lot of turnover. I ask, people with institutional knowledge need to be listened to, they need to be compensated so that they will stay here, and they need to be empowered to do their work. I like what the new budget department's doing. You say SCUSD has had changes in fiscal leadership which resulted in different narratives from different leaders. That is because there has been a tug of war between SCTA and the administrators over the sustainability of the benefits contracts. Do not listen to narratives from leaders. Listen to the reports of the district budget office. I had 2 other points, but I'm out of time. Thank you.
The final speaker.
First of all, I want to share some flyers with you guys. Good evening, Board President, Superintendent, our new superintendent, welcome, and our trustees and all our family, friends, and staff here. My name is Marion Bryce, and I'm a parent organizer with the Black Parallel School Board. Tonight, the Black Parallel School Board here is to announce for Black History Month, we're doing Black Parent Involvement Day on Tuesday, February 17th, 2026. And the time is the time of your school site, school date, school class time. Black Parent Involvement Day is a day for parents to visit and to serve their kids' classroom learning and activities. The Black Parallel School Board, along with the Sac City Unified School District, invite all parents to introduce themselves to our teachers, observe their children's learning activities. This special day is a way for parents to The special day is a way for parents to further build a rapport with teachers and to learn more about how to help their children succeed in their classes. Parents, please plan to participate in Black Parent Day. According to attend online training is required for February 12th. It's at 6 p.m. It is on Zoom. And the point of the training is to help parents understand the purpose of Black Parent Involvement Day and also how important it is to be involved in your kids' classroom and in your kids' life during their educational years. I will also conclude by stressing that we need to move toward a 21st century multicultural learning community. And when parents sign in, I'll share the flyer with you guys. On the flyer is the sign-in information. Once the parents sign in, they will receive an email on the rules and the protocols for doing observations in the classroom. You cannot disturb the class. You're there just to observe. And also, I would like to thank you guys for listening. And it's so nice to see you guys tonight. You guys take care.
Do we have any more public comment?
That does it for 6.1. We have 3 speakers for the general public comment.
Excellent. All right, moving to board discussion of our budget presentation. I'll wait for you to all get in the queue. Member Benjamin.
Oh, my bad.
Oh. Member Singh.
Sorry, set him up. I've been at that other screen for like the whole day. All right. I'm going to start off by taking that advice from our intern CBO, Ms. Grant Dawson, and say thank you to your team that has put in the work for the last not only week, but maybe 2 weeks of us, to be honest, and I'll speak for myself, begging and pleading that we get to this position that we're in right now. And I also want to acknowledge the folks who came up and provided their public comment, especially our staff. You will see, and let me know if I'm wrong, but the update that you put on here does not have those furlough days. Is that correct? Built into the budget?
So the furlough days are still on the presentation. I believe that there will be some comment potentially, but they're still on the presentation, yes.
If you go to that slide, right there.
It is.
It was right back there.
Oh, was it? It's right there already?
Yep. So could you
Yes.
explain how this works? So I think it's important for us to first note that these are emergency procedures. This board talked about emergency procedures. We talked about using these as last, final, unfortunate decisions we would make. Anything to avoid fiscal insolvency, anything to avoid state takeover. So I do see that the revised projection now has it at 0, but I would love for you to talk about what is being proposed in your mind when it comes to the shifts here in the emergency procedure bucket.
So as it relates to the implement stagger furlough days, and then the amended motion was to change it from 3 to 12. So you want that whole thing. Okay, so yeah, the original projection was 450,000 a day. That 450 would be more representative of a larger body of staff. So it wasn't just the underrepresented. That's not the amount. So based on the current definition of who was included in this particular proposal, it would be more like $100,000 a day. So therefore, for 12 days, 1.2 million. And then of that, as you heard many of the staff say, that still meant, even if you propose it this way, how they're funded. So you could have still done the furlough day for whatever that purpose was, but it doesn't get you, as we did clarify last week, like where our main focus is, which is the unrestricted general fund. What is also challenging when you have a furlough day application, it is really difficult to, grab it by groups. And so I think you're also hearing that as well. Some, not all, these, not those. That becomes very challenging, not only to implement, but to stand on. And ultimately, we do have some updated graphs that we're going to be putting on our website and sharing. The percentage of employees that you're talking about, again, aren't your majority and don't yield the amount of money that you'd be looking for. So is there something? Yes, it's back to also implementing it now, 12 days. The likelihood is that the majority of those people would not even take the 12 days because they can't, and they're too professional to do so. So with that being said, it means then that there's this other unresolved component that we adjusted their salary, but they still came to make sure that things were supported throughout the district. We also talked about the way that the item was also listed is to list how many days per month, and that would be something that in the event that the furlough day was implemented, that the employee should be able to make the decision along with their teams on how to balance that. And so with that being said, that would be another concern. We think the intent was to just list, I'm counting how many days for the rest of the month, but do want to say that out loud, that we would definitely want people to be able to make that selection, just as we said with the implementation of 3. Yes. Okay. Does that help?
Yes, and thank you. And I just wanted to clarify because there was a lot of public comment, and I wanted to get us clear on the fact that this board never wanted to go down this path, and we are clearly here to find the solutions.
Sure.
I know I'm speaking on behalf of folks, but I guess I'll have to use some I statements. I am not here to support ideas that would force us into this space, so I appreciate the work that your team has done to get us to some sort of positive budget to some level by the end of 25-26, which is the entire focus that I have, which is let's get to a clear budget for this year, and then let's figure out long-term solutions that can help us out moving forward. But I do appreciate every single person who works in this district, and that statement from Nutrition Services is not lost on me. Everyone here is absolutely essential for the work that they've done. These are also difficult decisions, so I just wanted to clarify what we were seeing up here for the community to see, and wanted to give you the opportunity to talk about it. So I have more comments, but I'll pause there.
Thank you.
Member Rhodes.
Oh yeah, and I'll keep my comments brief, but as we spoke about last board meeting, the difference between our general fund and restricted funds and how that impacts. And I personally want us to focus on the general fund balance and not two things, not impacting people's contracted, agreed upon labor agreements. So we should never do that. And if that was seemingly a move from our board, we want to clarify that and make sure that we are respecting labor contracts across the board. And so we can't not respect labor contracts, but then also, we talked about it. I mean, we had nutrition services come up last time, and we saw how it's like, hey, people are not being paid their per diems, but it's restricted funds. And so now we're just not paying people. And so the outcomes of how the system is interpreting what needs to go next, I think that I would personally not want to see people who are in restricted fund areas have any type of those impacts. And then also people who have negotiated contracts with us, that we go against those negotiated contracts. I'm sure there was a way to do it. I think you're hearing in me today a difference in tone because of you have something in front of us. And having something in front of us gives us something that we've been asking for, but then also that we can also say like, hey, that wasn't the intention, at least in my view, and I think I even clarified that last week when Board Member Kayado was making the motion. It was like, hey, what we're trying to do is this, not that, and hoping to find some clarity of when it came back. But I just wanted to say again out loud that restricted fund dollars are not what we're trying to encumber or hinder with staff. And also, my point of view is that I'm not trying to, how about we're not that I'm not trying to also hinder any collective bargaining agreements as we move forward. And so just put a note there for my colleagues that we should take that in consideration. And once again, I was here during the pandemic. I was a pandemic board member. And the work that our staff did during that time was unimaginable and needs to be respected from my point of view. And as we go down this line of, making sure that we don't go into insolvency, but also making sure that we respect that work and also what is already inside of our budget to do that we actually don't have control over, that is the general fund we're really trying to work on. So I just wanted to put that back out there for consideration from my colleagues as well, of what we're trying to do, what the impacts are, and then how we move forward. But thank you for bringing something to us, and then also that it actually shows that we have, if we do everything we're supposed to do, that we actually have money going into June, and we won't be insolvent. So thank you.
Yes, that is the goal. So thank you for your comments and what the intentionality is. So this is the second section about the furlough days and what your intent is. I think, just as a former process, what we can definitely work with the board on is and the community, when you have thoughts and strategies that you'd like to share, just send them so that we can analyze them and reply, so that because it's, again, as your former CBO said, right, this is a living document, then we can evaluate and analyze it and then come back with, here's what the answers are. Would you like to add them to the fiscal solvency plan or whatever the plan is? And that gives us the opportunity to work on those pieces, get the intentionality, and so therefore we can have the clarification plus the numbers, right, and what that impact would be. So that would be a desired outcome for next steps, but definitely appreciate the opportunity to bring it back so that we can have that clarifying question as well as being able to show it to the community what the items were.
Member Kayada.
Okay, so I have some comments, but I want to start with more reaction to the public comment and reaction to the action that we took last week which didn't have the benefit of being televised. So I know a lot of people are working under assumptions, and I want to clear a lot of that up. So first things first, I want people to understand why I made that motion, and I believe why the board unanimously approved it last week, and that is because we have spent months incredibly frustrated with the lack of progress on our fiscal solvency plan. We went from having a plan and feeling like we actually were going to have tough decisions, but we could get out of it about 4 months ago, to feeling like we had months without even any update because we had a change in personnel. And then when we had new staff come in, Ms. Grant Dawson, you were getting situated, but the message we got was, actually, this is dramatically worse than we thought. It was, this is bad. And so that was happening at the same time that we did not sense any urgency out of staff. We have been asking as a board, I have been asking since this crisis first became apparent, that we do use a scalpel, that staff bring us recommendations, and that we consider them and we adopt them in a way that is operationalized to get us solvent, but also to not impact our communities and our employees. The reason that we had to act is because we were not getting those scalpel decisions, and in fact, items were coming off that we had previously approved. And the board was put in a position of, well, we either have to start acting to get that urgency, or we were going to fall into receivership. And if I have those two choices, I'm going to pick urgency and the hammer. I want the scalpel, but if that's not one of my options, I'm going to pick the hammer rather than insolvency. But with that said, tonight's presentation shows, and you've been here, Ms. Grant Dawson, almost a month now?
Just about 24 days, I think. I stopped counting at 19 because it stopped mattering.
Yeah.
So.
I don't know if we're going to count the evenings and weekends you're working too, but we are now finding a way to get back to the scalpel. And so that means the hammer needs to go away. And the first things I want to start with are what Member Rhodes just said is the same for me, and this is direction the board has given, and this was also underlying the motion that I made last week, which is that some non-negotiables for me, for this board, are that we follow all collective bargaining agreements and that we always follow the law. Any item that's on the fiscal plan that violates those tenets is not a viable option. If any of the motion that I brought applied to that, then that is to be reinterpreted after staff analyze it and removed or reinterpreted. I also agree with Member Rhodes, and I believe the board has said this on multiple occasions as well, is that our intent is to address the general fund. We do not want to impact restricted funds because that doesn't help us with the fiscal solvency. If there's a short-term situation where we haven't figured it out and we need to act, I understand. But if we have any way to avoid restricted funds, because it makes no sense, like our employees have said during public comment, and Mr. Dawson, you've said this to me as well. In fact, you actually could be doing harm to some of those grant funding. So we don't want to do that. The budget is a moving target. The number we're trying to get to is a moving target. That thermostat is pretty clear, but it's going to wobble a little bit. And hopefully every 2 weeks when we have our regular meetings and get an update, it's firm enough that we go up.
Yes.
But in the same sense that our numbers are coming into clarity as we move along, the fiscal solvency plan also comes into clarity. It is an evolving document that is reactive to the situation on the ground. The number one underlying message is that we need to get solvent. But everything else within there needs to be modified as we go and as we operationalize it. First and foremost is something that we talked about in the budget subcommittee, and I'm going to give an update on this later, but we agreed in the budget subcommittee, including labor partners and staff and 3 of the board members, that definitely we are going to be recommending suspending the furloughs at this time. In these meetings with staff, and as we looked at what it would look like to operationalize it, it became clear that the days that we adopted will not actually generate the savings that were projected in the fiscal solvency plan originally, and that they will hinder our ability to repair our core systems and actually become solvent in the long term. And so therefore, my recommendation is that that be suspended immediately, that that not be rolled out. And if anyone has already taken some days, that we address those. And I want to, it's not a motion.
They're going to talk about it.
We don't want to get into what we got into last week. So my recommendation is direction that when this come back, they no longer be there. But in the short term, the direction is, if you all agree, that we don't do it for now. And that's already what we talked about in the budget subcommittee. I do have some general comments, and I think these are important, and I've spent 3 weeks going through these, so I apologize if I'm reading from the paper. But I have to say that I have spent months calmly and then urgently raising the alarm about the fiscal solvency plan not being implemented, and that we were at a real risk of fiscal insolvency. And that's not a bell that I won't ring. We need to ring that bell if that's the case. But after hearing the presentation tonight, and after learning in the budget subcommittee what we did yesterday, I am ready now to say that I am at a point of being cautiously optimistic that we will be able to avoid insolvency. We're not there yet, but we have identified a path. Now that we have a clear understanding between board, staff, and the community about how to implement our plan, we can correct our structural budget deficit issues. But I want to be very clear that a path is not a finish line, and there is a tremendous amount of work to do and many more difficult decisions. And those aren't easy, but we have to continue making them. We're not done. To move forward, we need to confront an uncomfortable truth, and that is that the crisis was predictable and it was preventable. It was the result of a district culture that treated transparency as a threat and oversight as an inconvenience. The board did not have accurate information about our budget when we made key decisions around budget priorities, labor negotiations, and other decisions with big fiscal impacts. Finding a path out of our immediate crisis does not change that. This board has learned that hard lesson, that we can't do our job if our direction is not being followed and we aren't receiving the information we need. With that said, I do want to acknowledge the grit that our district staff have shown. Many of them, many of you, are working long, hard hours under the threat of furloughs. As I've come into the Cerna Center after my day is over, I see people here working hard. You've proven that when we work with a shared set of facts, we can protect our students and our communities from the disaster of a state takeover. And my position remains clear. State receivership is not an option. It's a surrender of our community's voice that would be truly devastating to our district, our city, and our communities we are fighting the hardest to uplift. And I won't let that happen. I will give no shelter to anyone who prefers receivership to community input in our educational system. More than ever, we need to come together to fix this. We are at a turning point, but the work is just beginning. We must turn this moment into a permanent change of culture toward fiscal discipline and integrity, where the board provides direction and makes decisions based on reliable data, and staff implements the board's direction and vision. That starts with following through on our current course of action to avoid receivership this year, and it continues with our plans to completely, for once, correct our structural deficits for future years. Thank you.
Member Ibarra.
I originally was just going to say thank you all for all of your hard work to get us to this update, but I've had a change in heart and I'm actually going to share more words. But I do have questions, so I don't know if I should start with my questions or my statement. So I'm going to just start with my statement. And the reason for that, and the reason I'm doing it here, is because I hear community. I hear your public comments. I read your public comments, and I take them all into consideration when I'm making decisions. But right now, I'm going to talk about me and why my votes have been what they have been. I've been a parent in this district since about 2009, 2010. And I've sat in countless board meetings where I and other parents advocated, and some that are still here in this district. And I want to take us back to our December 18th meeting, where I had originally gave comments during a report presentation from FCMAT. And I started by acknowledging and apologizing for my faults in this part of the fiscal crisis that we are in. I recognized where my faults were, and I continue to work on them. But here's the thing, I must also speak out, because in order to create real systemic change, it starts with accountability. I want to thank all of the administrators that came out, and I want you all to know that I see the work that you do each day. But for years, the district has mismanaged money and accountability for the mismanagement thereof. and it often feels as though accountability is just a word with no definition in this district. You see, FICMATCH reports lets us see which departments are running adequately and which departments are far from adequacy. A board's job is to give directions, and the superintendent and cabinet work hand in hand to delegate and execute those directives. Now, I want to elaborate on real-life experiences that I and other parents in the community have experienced, and we have come up here, just as you all have tonight, to advocate for. You see, these experiences, there have been site committees that I have served on and other parents have served on where members are cherry-picked, further allowing site admin to have total control of their site plans for student achievement. And this is often referred to as rubber stamping. And some sites for years didn't even have a functioning ELAC committee up until a few years ago, and some still don't. That's an English language advisory committee. That means the folks that are supposed to be there speaking up for kids who don't speak English first. That's what ELAC does. That's not authentic family and community engagement. You see, one year I was actually voted to be the district English language advisory president. And immediately after, I faced a life-changing event that made my family temporarily have to leave SUSD. And for months, I received emails from the DLAP committee, even though I was no longer in the district. Later, I found out by an active committee member that I was still for months a voting member when I was no longer a parent in the district. That's when trust just began to just crumble. So how is that okay? As I sit here and I face these challenges, I've organized schools where negligent and abusive administrators were not held accountable. And instead of being terminated, in one instance, I learned the administrator was placed back in the classroom where further harm can be done. These are my truths and the truths of the communities that I've served for years. I live in a low-income community, y'all. I'm still in the trenches in the struggle with you guys, fighting with you, not against you. And that includes the admin that serve our students in those communities. And when I sit in these meetings, you all are hearing the same public comments that we are hearing. And still, they fall on deaf ears time and time again. Every time an email is ignored until there is pressure to respond, it only causes mistrust and legal problems, and we see it all the time in litigation through closed session. Supplanting has been a poor practice that continues to get swept under the rug. I personally attended a meeting where a principal came in and happily announced that he was given permission to supplant funding openly. The hush culture is one of the unsaid practices that one of the very commenters this evening brought up, asking for the job not to be threatened. That's the hush culture I'm talking about. No one calls it out. But when staff is being told not to speak to certain people or not to communicate with us, that's a problem. It takes all of our voices collectively. If I can't hear from you because someone is telling you you can't talk to me, that's not a proper representation when I'm up here speaking on behalf of all of my constituents and all of the employees of SUSD. And until leadership, and that's including us as a board, is willing to take ownership and stop blaming others, we slow down and sometimes stop the process to create a system. This is a system problem. It's not a specific person problem. This is a system issue. And until we are willing to take ownership and stop blaming others, we are slowing down and sometimes stopping the process to creating a system of authenticity and transparency. Transparency, which is what we have been fighting for months to get to. We're not going to be able to progress. All of us have to take that responsibility and lead with honesty, integrity, and truly center students in every conversation. Because all night I've heard people talk about their feelings, which I don't want to dismiss. I'm the biggest cheerleader of SEL. But I very seldomly heard about the actual impact that it's going to have on students and what this means for them. So together is the only way we're going to really make this equitable systemic change. And I'm only sharing these because I feel like I get my integrity is questioned. This is how I got here. I can't speak for all 7 of us, and I will continue to fight. And if in 3 years I'm still not here, I'll be on that side of the dais continuing to fight, because that's what I do for the kids, y'all. I'm really in it for the kids. They know that. They know that this seat is there. So anyways, I digress. I won't keep speaking on that. Now I will get to my questions. As you made this great report out, a few things that came to mind is around I love that you made the suggestion of possibly cutting back those furlough days, because that's kind of where I was going with this. But I really want to know if the conversation around how many positions are currently working out of class has been had. And what I mean by that is how many people are in interim positions, and of those, how many can go back to their original roles. And the reason that I ask that question is because when you are in an interim position, there is no interview process most times. Positions may not have been posted, meaning that that's not a proper way to select an employee for that position. And since we get questions from constituents all of the time, I just want some clarity on that. As we have this budget conversation. I don't expect an answer tonight, but that's one of the questions that I have on the budget. Can I ask a question for ask clarification? So
yes,
do you mean district-wide, any interim position, if it's interim or out of class? Because they're a little different.
Not necessarily district-wide, but as we're looking at the directives that the board has given on the cuts to administration, trying to get back to that 270, that's kind of where my question is at.
So it's around the administrative positions in interim?
Correct.
Okay. Got it. So we'll come back with that one. Did you have another question or?
No, those. Okay. I guess it was one in the same, but yeah.
Okay. All right. I got it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Member Kemper.
Thank you. Just to thank you for this update, because it's provided me with a lot of clarity so far, but I just like a little bit more on just one specific area.
Okay.
On slide 27 of the solvency plan, when you talk about budget balancing solutions, is the $43.8 million, is that just our goal, or is that what we have so far from what we've implemented?
The 20, which one? Sorry. Yes. So the 43.8 ties to, let me slide back up. The first page, which this is actually a spreadsheet, so you're seeing snapshots. Column C, that's 43.78, rounded, it's 43.8. That's where that comes from. So everything that's listed underneath is where that number comes from, of options that we have reviewed that to date are viable and implementable. So that's where the number comes from.
All right, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Member Benjamin.
I want to thank you. We went from a tsunami to a path, right? Yes. And so let me explain something to you what this board is doing. It's a shift in culture, and that's going to take time. We have taken steps to build trust, right? And you're going to see that as we go. It takes time. We gave direction some time ago. It was not implemented, and we had to keep walking, and we got to this spot. And I want to thank you and your staff for this. This was a huge, huge lift, and you were able to put this together to where, and give us what we asked for the whole time, and I want to thank you for that. You know, this is going to be about transparency. Last night, for the first time in our budget subcommittee, we all sat together, and we knew this issue of furloughs would come up, and we were able to speak, right, to what we presented last week, and we were able to talk amongst each other to understand that it wouldn't be worth, you know, doing that, you know, the price point. And so that's just an example of the collaboration that, you know, we are now embarking on as a board and as in, you know, developing these subcommittees. And so, you know, we want to everybody to think about, you know, what you can contribute so that we don't have to go through this, right? We have to have a cry now that we, the district, all of us, we, the district, right, have to come together to make sure that, you know, we stay where we need to stay. I just have that comment, which is thank you so much, right, for turning that tsunami into a path.
And thank you for sharing about the tsunami. I missed that in the all the components, and it definitely resonated. Do want to share something again as I yield the floor back to President Jean. So, and I jump to this slide just to say, as we move forward, and I know all these terms can get confusing. So, again, the district has multiple funds. The general fund has an unrestricted, so on any column, I'm looking at the blue or the orange, an unrestricted portion and a restricted portion. So on the previous slides, when we talked about our strategies and priorities, the restricted funds help supplement what you're doing in your core programs. So when we come back and we talk about what we may look at modifying or what may need to be changed, they all work in conjunction with what's happening to your core programs and how we use those restricted resources to support them. So whether it's ELOP or other strategies, Title I, all of those things help to make the core educational program better and higher quality for better outcomes. So when we future are talking about different priorities, there'll be combinations of resources that we're talking about and how we build that. So just kind of wanted to say how they work together, and that I recognize that we're talking about our intent, other funds, and other resources, and I hear the advocacy. When we're doing this work, it's a collective strategy. And definitely there's some funds that may not fall into that same conversation specifically, but it still is in support of how many students are we serving, how many adults are we serving, and what do we need to do to make sound decisions with accurate information based on what we have in order to make the proper recommendations for the superintendent and the board to approve. So just wanted to kind of put that together, and we'll provide some examples as we move forward of what we're talking about so that we're clear about how the two work. Okay, President, I'm turning it back over to you.
Thank you. So I've been thinking a lot about January and how as you were defining the problem, it felt like we were pulling up the rock and all the bugs were coming out. And it was incredibly hard and frustrating and scary. And the pressure, I think, that we were feeling of, we will not go to fiscal insolvency. We will not go to state receivership. How do we make the decisions to make sure we don't go there? I'm so thankful for tonight's presentation and the work of you and all the staff to put together the next steps of our plan, to take where our plan started and to really evaluate what that means, to better position it within our budgeting process and the data that we have. I particularly appreciate the understanding of cash versus budget, and that we're now beginning to truly clarify that.
Mm-hmm.
I remember hearing in so many different trainings, like, cash is king.
Mm-hmm.
It's, if you don't have the money to pay your bills, that's when you're in trouble. We can all have a budget and say, here's how we're going to spend the money.
Mm-hmm.
And because of the 18-month process that the state requires us to do in our budgeting, it makes the budget versus the cash so confusing.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate that we're focusing back on cash. And I also want to emphasize that that is about budget, not cash.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes.
And that we are tentatively thrilled, tentatively excited that we have cash through June, and that fiscal insolvency is not in the next 4 or 5 months.
Yes.
And I say tentatively because we don't know what info's coming tomorrow, but we're going to keep our eyes on that ball.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say thank you for walking this with us. I feel like we're turning that corner. It's like we're finally able to go from, we've been looking at the problem and defining the problem, and now we can move towards, nope, this is the solution. These are the steps we're taking, and we're not going to stop until we get there together. I wanted to kind of wonder, like, it sounded like our committee had a great start this week. How do we have more conversations about ways to keep the 3 board members who volunteered to be on the committee in conversation, bringing ideas to you, keeping those conversations going? Have we thought about that plan yet, or is that a next step for us to have that conversation?
So that would be the next step as it relates to the board, and the establishment of the committee. So we definitely need to talk about that based on your policy, what it says as far as establishing a committee, which would also include what the meeting rhythms would be and the optimal time.
Yep.
I would also ask very distinctly, I definitely like the idea, especially for very pertinent updates, which is a natural suite of communication with our constituents, that when we have those engagements, that we have them with all bargaining unit leadership. That's very uncomfortable to have that. And again, in this moment, I understand it based on the motion. If not, then that would be something that we would still host at another setting. Because again, you can't get here without all of your constituents working together and having the same information. So with that, that would also be an ask in making sure that we make sure that those invitations are extended. And we'll talk more about workshops and other areas that as you move forward, that will be important, and where and how to make sure that your constituent groups, as well as your committees, often it's like great to invite them to come as well, so they can really dig in and be able to provide their thought and their voice to the process.
The ultimate vision really was, we need to get all decision makers into a room, and having the conversations to see, as was stated and quoted, and I'm honored to have heard that resonate, that when we make any kind of decision in the budget, what impact does it have in other parts of the budget? And that we're not having that conversation enough. And so how do we get all of the voices and decision makers into a room to talk about that, and keep people more informed? So the ultimate goal of the committee is to do exactly what you just described. It started with, we're going to get 3 board members who are making this happen. And then the next step was, in a week, who can we get in the room to get this moving forward? And I look forward to partnering with you and our new interim superintendent to decide exactly what a district budget committee needs to look like to truly thrive and shift our systems to move us forward the way we need to. So I'm excited that you have ideas on that, and we can look at moving forward together.
Thank you. So I think if we're getting to, I'm going to put the ask.
Yes,
back
I do
up
have
on the
one
front.
last thing.
No problem.
And I think I've been told that there's a great answer to this question. We have been asked by, I have heard from some folks like, hey, where's the info? Where can we go find more info? And I said, we've got a website. And they're like, it still says November.
Right.
So where are we at in updating our website so that we can actually send people to say, here's where we are today or this week in that? So
Yes, so we are working to update the website with multiple reports as well as updates for ease. We also have.
You've got your team ready to help you with this answer,
We also have
too.
some additions that we want to add to the website that we've been working on as well. So I'll let my
You
colleague.
danced great.
I
You
did.
can keep dancing.
I did it.
Good evening, President Jean and Interim Superintendent McCarn and members of the board. I'm Brian Heap. I'm your Chief Communications Officer. And to answer your question, yes, we are working on that. As the board's aware, things have been a little fluid lately. So we are working on that. We've made some updates this week, and we are going to be updating again tomorrow. We'll be adding the thermometer as well as Lisa Grant Dawson's newest presentation, and we expect to be able to really begin to update in earnest now that we have a clear,
now we know where we're
clearer
going.
path.
I
Yes.
love it. Thank you so much. All right. With that, yes, would you mind just taking us through exactly what we're deciding on right now?
So the ask was for the board to review the update of the fiscal solvency plan. And you in your discussion included that there is an item that you are considering moving. So if that is the case, then that would need to be included in your motion. In addition to that, as it relates to the report that's going to the county, that you are also approving those documents for us to submit to the county tomorrow, the response to the first interim letter. So it's essentially what's stated here with the revision. Last thing is your decision. I don't know if you need to have discussion about the position.
Yes.
So with that being said, just truing that piece up. We do need to have that included in the motion or your next steps.
Excellent. All right, so if I kind of capture a lot of the clarity from what a lot of us said, please correct me if I missed something. Our full intent is everything be legal and that everything be honoring of contracts and labor law and agreements. That, I'll phrase it in kind of that big picture. There is always a need to balance what the budget cuts look like with the actual impact of what those mean. And how do we ensure that all conversation is incorporating both of those? And then the two more specific things, are we discussing a removal of the furlough days or a pause on the furlough days until we have more data? So what I'm hearing, and I'll say this from the depths of my heart, I think every one of us in here wants to remove it fully. We're also committed to not going into fiscal insolvency, and until we know we're not there, we want to pause everything that would cause that level of harm until we're confident we don't have to make that kind of decision. So at this point, it's all right. I believe our interim superintendent has a question. Go ahead.
Sorry if this is out of order, but it is a question. As you're talking about this, so can we just, for clarity purposes, can we say that the admin to classroom piece is off the table, as well as the furlough days that you're discussing? Just super, super clear on whatever's going to be voted. I think that would be the staff's recommendation. Admin to classroom piece off the table, as well as the furlough days. So appropriate or not, if it's not, first day. If it is, great.
So we're talking about 1A then and number 3, which also appears above as far as furlough days. So any furlough reference for that group of people in addition to 1A is what the amendment would be to approve the recommendation excluding those items.
Member Kayada?
So I will speak to my intent in those 2 items in particular. So my intent in adding those to the action we took last week was that any action that we had already identified that would be done starting July 1st, if possible to do it now to save money this year, that we do it. We have already identified that the furloughs do not make sense because the people who need to help us with this plan are the ones affected. So I would propose we remove that.
Okay.
With respect to the interim superintendent's question, it is my understanding that it is not actually operationally or legally feasible to make that move. So in keeping with the guardrails that I described, that we of course not violate CBAs or the law, that also should be removed.
Okay. Member Singh.
I just want to bring us back to the conversation again that led us here. And we were having a very different, as Member Rhodes spoke to, very different tone about 7 days ago. I think in acknowledging the work that your team has done is acknowledging the public comment, but also acknowledging that this board didn't have the intention that folks may believe we have of wanting to go to this point. The reason we wrote emergency procedures is those emergency procedures can be rediscussed, but we are not going to fiscal insolvency. And that is what this district should understand. We are not here to do any of these things, but we will do everything to avoid fiscal insolvency. We're not doing a state receivership. We're not doing a state takeover. So in that sense, yes, you came to us with a plan that gets us to where we need to be, or showcases that path from the tsunami. We're not here to get in the way of that. You're showing us how to get there, and we're going to trust you. So in that sense, I back what Member Kayada is saying. And I also want to mention something is, I just heard all my colleagues speak up here with a lot of conviction. Oftentimes I catch myself making these grand speeches, but everybody has just done a great job of voicing themselves today. And I want to acknowledge that it's not easy, but transparency is really, really hard. And all of you coming out here and giving your public comment is not easy either, especially putting yourselves in personal positions. But this is what transparency looks like, and it's ugly. Transparency is really ugly. It's really easy for us to say, oh, everything looks good, we'll be fine, then show up in June and we're not here anymore. Transparency is ugly, and I just want to acknowledge the level of work that your team is doing, that this group up here is trying to do. And I know it was really hard. It was very easy to talk, and I want to, for whatever reason I'm about to do this, defend Member Kayada and say, it was really hard to bring a motion like that last week. And it's equally as empowering to sit up here and say, I'm going to pull that because you have shown us a path. So I support Member Kayada to move this idea forward and make sure we remove this, because we're not looking at that path we were looking at just 7 days ago. So thank you.
All right, so we are adding a removal of 1A and a removal, can you go forward? Thank you, you were on it. And a removal of 3. Okay?
Tara, sorry, I didn't interrupt, but I just want to clarify. Previously, the board, at staff suggestion, had approved 3 of our low days, and I had motioned to increase that to 12. And my suggestion, and I think motion, if we can do it, would be to eliminate them completely, including the 3. So no furlough days.
No furlough days. Yep. Okay. The last piece of this, if you can go to this slide, is we have a, you are ready, Deputy Chief of Schools position that is on a timeline of a 30-day hire. And so we need to decide if we want to unfreeze that position so that we would be able to hire it and honor our agreement with the AG's office. That's a good question.
I have a question for legal counsel.
Yeah.
We had a discussion to some detail around what's upcoming with our proposed meetings with the AG's office. Are we able to talk about that? Because I thought there was some thought process that went into the discussion.
So two things, and thank you for the question. 2 things. One, obviously what the discussions were in closed session would not be appropriate to discuss here. Secondly, to the extent that the discussion or your comments right now might impact the district's legal strategy in any way related to that particular matter, then my advice would be not to engage in that conversation here. If you can frame it in a way that doesn't impact that, then that's certainly fine.
Luckily, I have the same degree as you, so I want to try my best to
Well,
frame it in a different way.
I'll start by saying this. Nobody stepped up to make a motion, so I'm willing to say it's currently dead on the table and we're not going to add it. But if you'd like to speak more.
No, I was going to keep it pretty simple to just say, can we bring this back up at the next board meeting?
It sounds like that's where we are because nobody made eye contact with me to make that motion. So it looks like we are hesitant. Okay.
Thank you, and thank you.
All right, so back to our officials. Are you adding something?
I had a question.
Member Kayada.
I just want to make sure, when I was reading this agenda item, are you asking for us to also adopt the revised multi-year plan tonight?
You're adopting the content of the response to the county. So yes, because that's included as an ad.
Okay.
So yes.
Just want to make sure we approve everything we
get
need
it
to
all.
tonight. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Do we have clarity on what we are voting on? Okay. Student board member preferential vote.
Aye.
Thank you.
Member Jean?
Aye.
Member Kayada?
Aye.
Member Benjamin?
Aye.
Member Rose?
Aye.
Member Singh?
Aye.
Member Ibarra?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, did you have another comment?
Approved.
No, okay. Thank you very much. Congratulations.